Wow, we are live. Hello, welcome to another Thursday Live with me, Dr. Jen. Yes, I'm excited to be here, but I'm also deeply burdened because of this topic. Um, it is one that is a sad reality, and I'm excited because I believe that after this session, someone out there is going to be empowered, someone out there is going to be unburdened, right, by what we're going to share here. And that keeps me excited. So, once again, you're welcome. If this is your first time joining into a session with me, let me know in the comments. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know if this is your first time. And if you're usual, of course, make noise in the comments section. Of course, remember that you can always ask questions as we go along so that at the end of the session, I'll be able to go through the comments and find any questions that you might have left, and then we can thrash them at the very end. Make sure you invite someone else, right? This is a very important topic. This is something that is silently eating away at some spouses in some homes. This is something that is more common than we care to even admit or acknowledge, right? Single parenting in marriage is a burden. Single parenting in marriage is a toxic cycle, and it's something that we ought to um, ensure that we do not allow it to be normalized. So, once again, you are welcome. Yes, I'm excited to indeed take you on this journey because I believe that this is going to make a difference. This is going to bring back normalcy to someone, to some home somewhere. This is going to unburden, right? This is going to unburden someone. So please invite someone, invite some other parent, invite some other spouse, some other wife, some other husband, someone out there whom you believe is going to be enlightened by what we will be sharing here today. I always say that you cannot change your approach until you change your perspective. As we're going to see ahead in this session, one of the key issues or the key reasons why single parenting in marriage is more common than we care to admit is because of the perspective of the wife, the perspective of the husband, even before they enter into marriage. And we're going to see how that influences your behavior, your tendencies, even from the one who is struggling, even from the one who is being burdened, who is carrying the burden of parenting alone, even while married. We're going to see in this session that there are some things that you do unintentionally that perpetuates the cycle. All right. So let me hear from you in the comments. What are you excited? What are you looking forward to in this session? And let me know if, in fact, tag someone else in the comment. So in many cases, right, as much as we want to talk about parenting, single parenting in marriage as a whole, the truth is this mostly falls on women. This reality is mostly about women. I am yet to come across a man in a marriage who is single parenting, right? Even though married to his wife. Yes, there might be a few cases, but like I said, I am yet to come across any. The majority of the cases I've come across is the plight of the woman, right? And for some, marriage has become a glorified form of slavery. And that's not what it was meant to be. Marriage is a good thing. It's not meant to be a form of slavery for one party and then a form of enjoyment only for one party. Okay? So in most cases, where there is single parenting in marriage, you have the wife carrying the full weight of parenting, household management, the emotional labor, while the husband disengages. Now, this is not meant to attack any person, right? This is meant for us to be enlightened, to come to light, to see what not just the reality of single parenting in marriage, but also to be enlightened about the impact, right? The repercussion of allowing this cycle to continue, how it affects our children that we are raising today, how it affects your spouse. And this is very important. So, the number of messages that I received after the post that I made last week was overwhelming. My inbox was flooded. When you look at the post, it looked like it was very quiet, but at the background, I had so many wives reach out to me in tears, some in tears, sharing their burden, sharing their difficulty, talking about how this has been going on for too long and they just don't know what to do, how they are broken and all of that. So this is something that is quietly happening in so many homes. And if you look even at the skits, some of the skits that are out there, right, there is a common skit, and I think I've talked about this particular skit before. There's a common skit out there about what happens on a school morning at home. So in that skit, You see the man in the bedroom, reacting to the sounds that are being made as if the wife is fighting with the kids and they're flying and throwing things everywhere. And then so my question was, when I watched that clip, was like, what are you doing in bed, right? If she's out there, you hear the struggle, you hear the crying, you hear the shouting, pots flying. According to this kid, he's in the room. The husband is in the room on the bed with the sheets over his head, while the wife is out there apparently struggling, pots flying everywhere, screaming, children crying. And I'm like, how can you be comfortable in bed while that is happening? All right. So again, many of these parents who reached out to me shared their exhaustion, their frustration, and the silent pain of being unsupported. You know, it the reason why it's so painful is because, I mean, you have help right there, right? You're not a single parent per se, you're married. It means that you're in partnership with someone, or supposed partnership with someone, and yet the full burden of everything that concerns the home, the kids, running the home, every single thing. And in most cases today, you still have to juggle that with your work. You still have to juggle that with other social responsibilities and all of that. And then sometimes they'll say, oh, she's a strong woman. That title for me is not something that should make anyone proud, especially in the case of single parenting in marriage, because it actually says that you are, you have to be strong. And you're being strong not because you don't have help, but because you have no choice. All right. Now, strength in this case is actually is like saying that, oh, I don't need to do much because I married a strong woman. My life is just easy because I married a strong one. So what that is saying is, oh, I can just sit back and relax because I have someone who's doing everything. That is a form of glorified slavery. It's a form of glorified slavery. So we often think of single parenting normally single parenting in actual terms you should refer to, someone who is widowed, someone who is obviously single, as the word puts it, right? A single parent. But in the case of marriage, you have the other person, right? You're in partnership with someone, but you're operating as a single parent in every sense of the word. In every sense of the word. So many parents are living this reality inside marriages today. Besides the overwhelming messages I received inbox, so many parents, even in the church, are silently enduring this reality. But we're going to see in a few minutes how heavy the repercussions are. How heavy the repercussions are. Because one thing we often forget is that our children will not just remember what we said, they are very strongly impacted by what they see us do, by our dynamic. The dynamic of your marriage, the dynamic of your home shapes them more than you realize. It shapes them more than you realize. But I'm sure most of us are curious. Why does this happen? Right. For those of you who saw the video I put out on Facebook, on our WhatsApp platforms, of the pregnant woman carrying a load, carrying a baby on her back, and I think there was something else. I think she was holding a child. I can't remember. Well, she was carrying a baby on her back. She's heavily pregnant, so she's carrying another child in the womb. She's carrying a baby on her back, and she has a load on her head, while the husband walks behind her with a machete, with a cutlass. That's all he was carrying, and he was just strolling behind her while she had all of this load on her. And I said that this is literally the definition of what single parenting in marriage looks like. One person is overly burdened while the other person is just having the time of their life. But why does this happen? Because the question I asked myself when I saw that video was, how can you be comfortable? What happened to bring this man to the point where this doesn't scream like this is not right? Where you feel comfortable, you don't realize that something is not right about that whole picture. You're comfortable watching your spouse go through all of that, and yet it doesn't move you. What happened, right? How did you come to be that way? So this cycle does not start in marriage. It started long before. And this is something that we must, bear at the back of our minds. Because even when you want to break this cycle, it is very important that you understand its roots, because the roots also play a part in your approach to breaking the toxic cycle of single parenting in marriage. So it doesn't start in marriage. It didn't start in your marriage. For most of the cases, in fact, all the cases I've come across, I dare say so, right? Because I've counseled a couple of these cases. When you look back how each of the spouses grew, you're going to see where the roots came from. You're going to see where the roots came from because these are inherited scripts from child. What is a script? A script, when you watch a movie, everyone you see in the movie is playing a script. They're simply acting out what they have been given. So they're given a script and say, and they're told, this is the part you have to play. So most of us don't realize that your childhood is a script, right? That continues to play out even in adulthood. The things you saw, the things you normalized, your perspective is shaped by where you grew up from. The way you see the world is shaped by how you grew up. It's shaped by the dynamics of the family within which you grew up. That's why learning is something I will always keep preaching. That if you're not learning as a parent, you are wrong. Because there is so much that you will continue to perpetuate without even realizing that this is not right. Why? Because it feels normal to you. Doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. So most of the couples who are experiencing single parenting in marriage are simply acting out inherited scripts from childhood. Many women grew up watching their mothers, their grandmothers, and other significant female figures around them carry the entire burden of parenting. I dare anyone to challenge me in the comments, right? I'm sure for most of us, if we look back, you'll be able to see the picture of maybe your mom, your grandmother, maybe your neighbor, or some other woman around you who was a significant figure. That was the strong woman doing everything while the husband would just come back, cross his legs, sip his palm wine, watch TV, snore on the chair, and she's running up and down. She comes back from work or she has to come up from the farm. She still has to cook. She still has to clean, So that imbalance is not something that starts in a marriage. Usually there is a script. There is something right from your childhood that normalized this pattern for either of you or for both of you that makes it easily be perpetuated in your marriage. So these parents who grow up or people who grew up in homes where they watched maybe their mother. So the boy child who becomes a husband watches his mother going through all of this struggle, going through carrying this heavy burden. Might feel sorry for her in the moment, but doesn't realize that the example of his father is also being imprinted on him. The example of what his father is doing in that time, how he's just relaxed, how he doesn't really get involved with everything that the mom is doing, how it's only the mom that is taking care of all of them. It becomes normalized for him. It becomes normal. It becomes normal. So they enter into marriage. The women enter into marriage believing that it is their job to do it all. Now this is a script, a silent script that you're acting out. There is a background belief that it is your duty to do it all. Even if you grumble and complain while you're doing about your spouse's non-participation, you realize that there is also the tendency to not ask for help. Now, I would say 100% of the cases I've worked with, right, when I ask them this question, how often do you ask for help? When is the last time you remember asking your spouse, directly for help? Usually, most of them can't tell me. All right? Most of them can't tell me. So even if they grumble and complain about their spouse's non-participation, they rarely ask for help because deep down, they believe that it is their duty. Now, on the side of the man, the man's inherited script. Many men grew up watching their fathers who were emotionally absent, maybe even physically absent, who believed that provision was all that they had to bring to the table. So they enter marriage thinking that parenting is not their responsibility. Look at parenting conferences, parenting seminars, parenting courses. Who are those that make up the majority? Now, the difference in the numbers that show up already reflects what the mindset of the male gender is about parenting, especially in our context. There is the widespread belief, even if they don't say, there is a widespread belief that parenting is the woman's job. Meanwhile, parenting is not a gender role. It's not a gender role. Each gender has a part to play that must go beyond just provision. So many of them think that they enter marriage thinking that parenting is not their responsibility, that as long as bills are paid, as long as, all the financial stuff is taken care of. And in our day and time, there are so many cases where the woman still has to chip in financially, even while carrying all of the weight of the family, the parenting, and all of that. Then there is the religious and cultural reinforcement of this narrative. In most church and cultural settings, women are told that parenting is their divine assignment, while the men are excused from active participation. You know, the scriptures clearly say that two are better than one. Marriage is a partnership. It's a divine partnership. So you don't partner in only in some things, you partner in everything. And parenting is not exclusive. Parenting is not exclusive. So I'm going to answer your questions at the end. All right, we're going to talk about that. How about when the husband is not in the same time? We're going to talk about that when we look at what to do. All right. So even in cultural, church settings, this narrative is heavily perpetuated. All right. I think most of the cases I've worked with are from church settings where the women just silently carry it, as some form of, submission, as some form of, it is my duty, it's not a woman's assignment, right? It's a parent's assignment. Parenting is a parent's assignment. And if both of us identify ourselves as parents, then parenting concerns us both. Then there is the silent acceptance. Now, because these mindsets are both inherited, so both spouses come into the marriage with their own mindset. The woman comes with her mindset, thinking that it is my duty. Now, you must realize that most of us grew up watching our moms, and not happy that they had to do all these things by themselves. But then when you enter into the marriage, you don't realize that that mindset has already been installed in you as well. That's why many women find it difficult, even while struggling with the weight, to ask for help. So both spouses will just enter into marriage and unconsciously begin to play their roles. The woman takes on everything, the man steps back, and the imbalance becomes normal. She's grumbling, she's complaining, she's bitter, but she's doing. She's just going. She's not even asking for help anymore. Can't you see that I'm tired? Can't you see that this is too much for me? Can't you just know that I need help? All right, so this creates a toxic legacy. You know, one of the most painful realities about parenting is the fact that our children are always learning. Even when we are not teaching intentionally, they are learning. Even when we don't intend for them to learn, they are learning just by observing your example, by seeing you do what you do, by seeing you live your life. They are learning from you. They're learning from you. In fact, your marriage is their first school of marriage. They're watching you. So when this cycle continues, children absorb this imbalance as normal. That is how you and your spouse first came to normalize whatever is happening in your home. Boys will grow up believing that the man's job is just to come home after work, sit there, relax, pick up the remote control, watch TV until he falls asleep, and then goes to bed. While in the morning, the woman wakes up earlier than everyone, possibly even prays with the kids, prepares them for school by herself, and then goes to work, and then comes back from work, and then it begins all over again. So, what do you think your boy child is learning from that? Exactly what you don't want to happen. What do you think your daughter is learning from that as well? So the girls grow up believing that exhaustion is their destiny. God forbid, right? But that's the truth because they see you carrying all of that weight all the time, even though daddy is there. They see you carrying all the weight all the time, but daddy is there. So even if you don't say it, they end up internalizing the belief that this is what I'm meant to do. This is what it looks like to be a good mother. This is what it looks like to be a wife. This is what I have to do when I get married. This is my job. This is how it's supposed to look like. So they're going to normalize whatever is happening to them in your home on a day-to-day basis. So marriage becomes a breeding ground for bitterness because the one who is carrying all of this weight, even though help is just nearby, but not asking, to come in, not giving a helping hand, it's going to create bitterness. The active spouse will end up feeling resentful, unseen, and overburdened. While the inactive spouse will end up feeling criticized and disconnected. And the more you criticize, the more he pulls away. The more you criticize, the more he pulls away. So, and that's how the cycle continues. You saw your parents do it, you're now doing it, and your kids are learning from it, and that's how it's going to continue until someone steps up to break the cycle. So the children raised in this imbalance will repeat it in their own marriage. And that cycle will continue silently, shaping families for generations. Because even our parents also saw it from their parents, something that's been going on for generations. But it's possible to break the cycle. Now, in case you're still needing motivation to do work in this area, remember, your children are silently learning from you every single day. They are watching what you normalize, and what you normalize becomes your blueprint for their adulthood. It becomes their blueprint. So, how then do we break the cycle? I'm sure this is the part that most of us have been waiting for, right? What can I do? This is my reality. This is not something I'm comfortable with. I have spoken. I have tried. I am tired. What do I do? How do we break the cycle of single parenting in marriage? Now, based on everything you've heard me share, I'm sure by now you understand the roots of this problem, where it's coming from, right? It's an age old problem. It's a problem that has been there for generations past. It's not new. This has always been there. But I think that this is one generation where we are finally able to shine the light on some of these abnormalities and do the work to break it. So if you're in this session, already that's a big step, right? That's a big step that you're taking to try to break this cycle, this toxic cycle that should not become a legacy for your children to inherit. So if you are here as the burdened spouse, right? Maybe you're the one who is carrying all of the weight. The first thing you have to know is that you must understand your tendencies. What am I doing? What is my role in perpetuating this cycle? How am I encouraging this cycle of single parenting in my home? That's a shocking question, right? Because you'd expect me to just start attacking what you should do for your spouse to participate. But then you must realize that there is a role that you are playing unconsciously, unintentionally. There's something you're doing that is encouraging and perpetuating the cycle, that encourages it to keep going on. Yes, you're the one suffering, but you have to ask yourself, is there a way in which I have enhanced the imbalance by assuming the role alone? Remember, I said earlier that it gets to the point where, because the woman comes into marriage believing that this is what I have to do, usually you start by just taking up everything, right? You're taking up everything. You're just doing everything without asking for help. You're the one running around. When the baby comes, you're the one doing everything. No, 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 dear, just sleep. It's okay. I can handle it. So initially that's how it starts, right? So sometimes in some of the cases I've worked with, in the beginning, the spouse starts trying to come in to help. But then because the woman has the mindset that this is something that I have to do, this is my role, oh no, you're tired after work, just rest, just relax. And as the kids start growing bigger or the kids start increasing in number, the burden keeps increasing. But then there's a training that has already been in place. You've already trained your spouse to understand that they don't have to participate, right? That you can handle it. You're capable of doing everything. So there is a role that we play, sometimes unintentionally, that passes the message, I got this. It's okay. I can do it. I can handle it. And it gets to the point where you no longer ask for help. But then the bitterness sets in where the burden is getting heavier on you. And you're like, can't you see that this thing is hard? Can't you see that I'm struck? Can't you see I'm tired? Can't you just come and help? You're there watching TV while I'm here struggling with the children. Can't you just come and help? So do you expect help without communicating? You expect him to know that you need help, but without asking for help. Especially if at the very beginning, you're the one that perpetuated the cycle, right? By dismissing the other person. Why? I'm not here to blame you, right? Because you must look at where you're coming from as well. Most of us believe that it's something that we have to do. So you just take it on. You're just doing everything by yourself. Let me hear you in the comments, the women who are here, right? Most of the times you find out that you're just, and sometimes when he does it, you complain that, oh, he did not do it well, let me just leave it, let me do it. Even when he tries to participate and does it in his own way or doesn't do it well enough, what do? We take it over, right? And we say, no, leave it, let me just do it, leave it. And you want to do it all by yourself. So sometimes even when the help is coming in, the way we are not receptive to it, of course, discourages any other help to come. Because we have the mindset that this is something that I have to do. So one of the things that you have to start working on is speaking up and speaking out, getting comfortable asking for help. So first you understand, what are my tendencies? How am I perpetuating this cycle of parenting being my responsibility? The child is sick, you're the only one that has to do everything. You're the one that sleeps in the hospital, and then you still have to go to work and all of that. PTA, you go to PTA, you see 5 fathers and 50 mothers. You go to parenting seminars, one father. I have had seminars where I think the least we've had so far is one father. At least, anyway, thank God there's always at least one male. But usually, till date, the women are always far more than the men. You go to school settings, the same thing. The women are highly represented, but the men no. I'm yet to attend any PTA anywhere where the men are more than the women. But these children do have fathers. These are mostly married couples. So speak up and speak out. Work on communication techniques. That is a very big part. Because one of the ways that you're going to start breaking the cycle is by getting comfortable or learning and knowing how and when to ask for help, to invite participation and welcome the participation. It doesn't have to be done perfectly the way you would do it. That's another thing. You have to really embrace the fact that both of you bring different things to the table. The way your husband will tie a diaper may not be the way you tie your diaper, right? Both of you bring different things to the table. So, what are your expectations towards your spouse, particularly early on? Do you silently not expect him to do certain things? And then later on, you complain about not being helped? If that is a silent expectation that you have and you don't address it, it's going to keep you from inviting and welcoming help when you need it. It's going to discourage active participation. Now, this is why from everything that when you learn about parenting and about how powerful it is in shaping who a person becomes, you're going to realize one of the most important things that most of us overlook when we're trying to get married was to try to understand how the person you're about to marry was raised. You realize just how important, because if you're marrying someone who was raised by an absent father, the tendency that they are going to be absent as a father, not physically present but not involved, is very high because that's the only example they know. So you must first query your own tendencies. Call your name, say Jennifer, Christelle, or whoever else is here. What are my tendencies? How am I silently encouraging this? How? Do I ask for help? I mean, do you actively ask for help? In the morning when you're waking up with the kids, do you ask for help with homework? Do you ask for help with PTA? Do you invite participation? Because if this has been going on, maybe your kids are in their 10s and I don't know, 15s, or you have kids who are already in primary school, and you have been habitually doing the morning runs all by yourself without any participation, then it's going to take you you need to get to the point where you start normalizing asking for help. Okay, hey, I was thinking, can you support, can you baby bathe the kids while I do this? Can you, because in my home, that's exactly how it works. And I cannot even picture how parenting would be or how my life would be if we had not actively worked. I had to work on my communication. Because for us to have gotten to where we are today, where there is active participation from both parties, right? Myself and my husband. In the morning in my home, we don't have a nanny who lives with us. It's just me, my husband, and 4 kids. And everything that you see me do. So without active participation, I'm sure I would be, I don't know, I can't even picture what I would be like. But remember that you have a part to play. Sometimes you have to be able, now as the primary home manager, because the truth is women are nurturers, right? Homekeeping is something that women are really good at. So you have to be able to also give pointers. What kind of help do you need? Where do you need help? Where do you really need me to step in so that the burden can be lighter for you? Some women will not be able to tell you that, but they're just angry that you're not helping. So you have to work on. So communication is key. You have to be ready and skillful at communicating. The reason why I say this is because now, when most women, right, who've identified this problem want to go to start asking for help, they now turn it into nagging. Remember, I said earlier that when it becomes a case of excessive criticism or judgment, you're going to instead push the other person away. All right? So, yes, you want to speak up and speak out. Work on communication techniques. Ask without nagging and set boundaries clearly. What happens when you try to get him involved and he thinks you are comparing with him? Now, remember I've said that it has to play with, first of all, sharing from your perspective what it is, like what this burden looks like, right? How does it feel for you carrying this burden? Like I said, communication is not just saying, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, right? But sometimes you have to be able to share with your spouse the importance of their participation from the perspective of how it impacts the children. This is not something you're going to just fix overnight. But at the same time, you don't have to give up, right? You don't have to give up. You also have to be skillful at inviting and accepting participation. So you're not going to just go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's going to take time, it's going to take skill, it's also going to take patience. But first, you must understand who you are dealing with. What is their mindset? What is their own perspective of this whole, family dynamic and who is supposed to do what? And how long has this been going on? If you've been carrying that burden for 15 years and suddenly you get up one morning and say, hey, come and help me, let's go and prepare the kids for school, just like that, out of the blues, of course you're going to meet resistance. All right. So first it takes you maybe setting aside time to discuss it. This is what I need. One of the things that you have to get comfortable and skillful at communicating in your marriage is needs. These are my needs. I need support. I need help. And this is how and where you can be able to support me. Without judging, without criticizing, without nagging. Just putting out the facts out there and the boundaries. This is what I need. This is how I'm struggling. This is where I need you to come in. And this is why. So be intentional about making room for participation. Don't just assume the rule alone, because this is another tendency that easily happens. You ask for help today, the spouse says, "Oh no, I'm busy, I cannot be doing that," and then you give up. You never ask again. Most of the wives I've worked with tell me, "Oh, but I always ask, and when I ask, you just say no. I just forget about it. I just keep doing my thing." So you ask and then you give up. But then when you give up, what happens? It continues to grow. You can never break the cycle if you give up. Stating what your needs are and expecting help. Don't get to the point where you stop expecting help. So now for the inactive spouse, if there are any husbands listening, recognize that your disengagement is harmful. If you want to think about it from the perspective of your children, it is harmful because this is what it does. When one person carries this burden, it changes who they are to their children. Because if I'm constantly doing everything by myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to show up as the best version of myself for our kids. So it's one thing for you, the inactive partner, not to be involved, but not realizing the fact that your own involvement also robs the kid of the second available parent is something that you have to always consider. It's something that you always have to consider. So yes, it burdens your partner, but it also robs your children of a wholesome parent, because the parent who is engaged, who is involved, is constantly drained because they are always having to give more than what they even have. The stress, the strain, the emotional burden that they are carrying, it makes them to very irritable. And scripture reminds us that two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. That's scripture right there. So even parenting is easier when two are participating. So to you who is trying to give out the invitation for your spouse to come in, start small. Start with the small things, right? Invite participation. Now, sometimes, one thing I've also realized, I think I've had some fathers share this with me. All right. Now, some fathers are very egocentric, very concerned about how, if I don't do it well, how will it make me look? I will not. They're so concerned about the fact that they might not do it as well as you. So sometimes just the encouragement in the small things that the other person is trying to chip in and do. That's why I said if you're overly critical and you're expecting the other person to do it exactly the way you would do it, you can completely discourage participation. So let's say your spouse is trying to chip in, your spouse is trying to come in. You're still at the early stages. For those who are still young in marriage, right? You have to be careful about how you respond to participation from your spouse. If your narrative or if your tendency is to shut it down and say, "Oh, don't know, just leave it, I'll do it. Look how you have come and spoiled everything," all of those things, it's going to discourage the other person from participating. Because if you know how to do it better than myself, then why should I bother? All right? Instead of having you nag me for the fact that I didn't do it well, why bother? Why bother? And we can agree as women that this is something that we do. That sometimes the other person tries to even participate, and all you see is how they were not able to do it well. and then it gets you upset. What does that tell me? That let me just leave it. She can do it all by herself. So the strong woman narrative, where we constantly want to be doing everything by ourselves, and then when the burden becomes overwhelming, we start getting bitter that nobody's coming to help. But how did you respond to the help that came? Now, your absence teaches your children for the for inactive parent. Your absence teaches your children that one parent is optional. And your presence teaches them that partnership is powerful. Sometimes it's easier to just do than getting them involved, though it's really overwhelming. The problem comes when values are different. But again, I really love that you brought this point up. She says sometimes it's easier to just do than getting them involved, though it's really overwhelming. The problem comes when values are different. Exactly when values are different. But then you cannot eat your cake and have it, right? You cannot dismiss involvement and at the same time lament from the lack of involvement. Like I said, it cannot, two of you cannot bring exactly the same things to the table. You must look at the value of having the other person participate. It's all about understanding the importance of what you're doing, right? So yes, you can do it all by yourself, and that's the truth. Women are really incredible. They can handle so much, but they should not have to handle as much as they're handling because it ends up being detrimental for you, for your health, and also for your children. If there's any reason why you should put in the work to ensure that there is participation from both parties, is because children need both parents. So it's not just about you. The other person will not do it as perfectly as you. All right, they won't do it as perfectly as you. When my husband is watching the kids, even though he has taken lots of trainings himself, he's still not able to do so many things the way I do it. But that's okay. The fact that he's there participating, that already is huge. And it's important for the children we are raising that they see both parents getting their hands dirty, getting involved in raising, training, in providing care. That's another thing. You know, I remember I shared the story of how I heard I had a meeting with someone, a potential business associate, and he couldn't make it for the meeting. When I called to find out what was happening, he told me he was helping his wife watch the kids. You know, that is a mindset of someone who has, you know, you can tell that in their home there is a dynamic where, you know, it is your job and I step in to help you from time to time. So you're not helping your spouse. And if you allow that narrative to continue going, then at the same time you're robbing your kids of what the other person can bring to the table. My husband really shows up when we don't have a nanny. Immediately there is help, he disappears. So right now I don't want a nanny because I know he'll be very conscious. Yeah, that's another strategy. That's a strategy right there. That's a great strategy right there. So, like I said, you have to understand your tendencies. What are the tendencies in your home? Because some men will step in when they realize that there's nobody to help their wife. So at least there's that human part of the other person that says, "Oh, she's overburdened. I need to come in to help." So again, remember that it's not just about care. There are other things, there are other aspects of parenting. So it depends on, for every family or for every marriage, it looks different, right? Showing up means it looks different. Even for the when both parties are active, it looks different. But you have to make room for involvement. PTA is coming up. You know, that's when I'm like, okay, so our kids' PTA is, you know, maybe next week Wednesday. How are we doing it? So you bring it up to the table. Don't just suddenly go and attend. That's another thing. You don't even bring it up. So you have to bring it up. You have to make sure you put the expectation on the table. You have to keep bringing it up. Because if you if you don't communicate the expectation, then it never gets to the point where participation is even a discussion. Because most women get to the point where they just silently begin to carry the burden. They don't speak up anymore. They don't seek help anymore. They are just trying doing everything and being bitter and being resentful. So invite participation daily, constantly, lovingly, patiently, but put it out there. I love it when you know, the other day when you did this for the kids, you really did it so well. Please, can you help me? Da, da, da. You know, keep putting it out there. Don't get to the point. Even if no, there's no today, it does not mean that there'll be no tomorrow. Don't get to the point. Don't assume that there will always be no. Bring it up. Let your spouse know that this is what I need. I need help. I need help, and this is how. So don't just say I need help, expecting him to just find the gaps and fill it. Let your spouse know where exactly you need help and what help looks like. What does it look like? When you say you need help with what? Maybe you can say, okay, can you help with the kids' homework? Can you help with this? Can you chip in here? Can you step in here? This is what we have to do today. I'm supposed to go here. I have to be at work. I'm going to close at this time. What time do you get off work? All right, you're going to get home first. Can you please ensure that? So you communicate. You have to speak up. You have to become skillful at communicating. If not, you continue to suffer in silence. So I love how she shared this strategy. She says that her husband shows up when there's no nanny. And she has realized that every time there's no nanny, he steps in. So her strategy reduced the amount of external help because his participation is important. The children need to see both parents. They need to experience being cared for by both parents. That's how you break the cycle. I realize that my spouse does over and again when I shower him words of affirmation. Yeah, I love this point. So she says exactly what I said earlier, that you need to invite participation, not just by asking for help all the time, but by noticing the things that the other person is making an effort to do. Notice the things that they are doing right and appreciate them. It will not be exactly because some women are like that. They want it, you want you to do it exactly. Look at the way you tie the baby. You don't even feed the baby well. Say the baby is dirty. Yeah, but at least the other person is participating. So instead of nagging and complaining about how the other person showed up, begin to share tips about how to do it better. Encourage participation, invite participation, expect it, and keep your expectations on the table. Communicate clearly about your expectations, about how and where you need help. I'm telling you that every case I have counseled, every couple I have worked with that came to me with this problem, one of the biggest issues they were having is that the wife was not being clear about how she needs help. Most women, they're just bitter, but they're not really saying or inviting help. They're not inviting participation. Sorry, they're not inviting participation. And when he does the little that he can do, at least just at the entry point, the response that they get, the response that some of us women give is bitter. It's like, oh, you didn't do it well, just leave it next time, not come. Yeah, it's just a waste of time. When you're involved, you're making everything worse. Why would I want to be involved when I make everything worse? And this is not an excuse for the other party. But at the same time, like I said, it perpetuates that narrative. All right. So breaking the cycle is not easy. I'm not even going to paint it anything that it is not. It's not easy. It requires courage, it requires honesty and intentionality. You have to be intentional. But remember that the cost of not breaking it is greater. The cost is your health, the cost is your mental health as well. The cost is what your children are learning and the fact that the cycle will keep going on and on until you intentionally decide that you are going to do what it takes to break it. You're going to do what it takes to break it. You're going out with your spouse. You're the one carrying the bag. You're the one carrying the baby. You're the one holding say, dear, please hold the baby. And you realize that sometimes the wife does not even ask for help, does not even invite. Yeah, I'm sure on the other side as well, you, the man, should also notice that this woman needs help. But like I said, you must understand the roots of what is perpetuating this problem in your home. Who are you dealing with? How did this person grow up? Like I said, most of us did not even ask the right questions when we're getting married. Now, there are things I'm going to teach my kids about what to check. Forget that tribe wahala. We are always too focused on tribe and this and that. We forget to look at how a person was raised, the dynamic in their family. It is a big issue. It's a big issue. Most of us are suffering today. Most wives are suffering today, or most couples are suffering today because they failed to understand the impact of how powerful it is, the way a person is raised, how it shapes their mentality. You're raised by you're married to a man or to a woman who is raised in a home where this dynamic was very strong. Their father never picked up a pin in the house. What do you expect? What do you expect? So that mindset is deeply ingrained in that person. So you have to first of all understand who you are dealing with. That will also tell you how patient you have to be, how persistent you have to be, and how skillful you have to be at communicating and holding up your boundaries. Very important. All right? Very important. So thankfully, we're having a course coming up next month on communication. Communication is a big deal because it's not just about asking, but how you ask. There is a way you ask that makes it hard to say no. You have to be able to understand that sometimes, even when you have the legitimate right to what you're asking, the way you ask it is also an issue. All right. Now, someone spoke earlier about what of the person whose spouse is not around, who's not in the same town. How does it work? I do ask who when he's around. Yeah. So when your spouse is around, that one you have to invite participation because I mean, in that case, it's even more pertinent than for those who are having their spouse always around because absence you can't. I mean, how do you get participation when the person is absent? But even when they're absent, I was talking with a couple. I think about a month ago who have been separated, living in separate towns. One is abroad, the other one is here, and for some reason they cannot be reunited because of documents and all of that. And I was sharing with her some things that you need to do to get your spouse actively involved. Over the phone, there are times your kids come to you with issues, maybe at school. You call them and hand over the phone. That's still parenting. That's still participation. Instead of just rushing to handle it by yourself, call the phone, call the parent, hand over the phone to the child, and say, "Talk with your dad about this." You know, there's this book I read, Raising Godly Children by Faith Oyedepo. And there is something very early in my marriage. She's the one that book was the book that gave me the first insight on the importance of making room for participation. One of the way now, the wife is called to be a helpmeet to her husband. You must also recognize that you need to also be a helpmeet to your spouse, to your husband, in terms of parenting. And sometimes it's by creating the platform for him to come in and participate. In that book, she said that there were times her kids came to her with certain issues, and her husband, of course, was so busy. I mean, he's building a multi-million sized, what should I call it, congregation or church. He has in fact, a lot of work to do, and the tendency will be for him to get buried in his work. That's what he was doing. So she would, at sometimes, open the door of his study when he was in there and send the kids inside with their problems. She should not attend to them. She'll say, "Go and meet your father. Go and meet your father." That's inviting participation. Go and meet him. She puts them inside and she locks the door. Go and meet him. You have to be able to invite participation. Create the platform for it. Don't just get to the point where you just sit quietly and accept it. Oh, I'm a strong woman now. I'll be handling it. And then you're bitter. And then your kids are learning from that this height's supposed to be. Sometimes I'll call my husband to help check the children's books and check their homework. That way I get him involved. Yes, exactly. You just send the kids over. Say, "Go and ask your dad." Go and ask your dad. Go and show daddy. My son will come to Mama, "Please, can you help me tie my lace?" Go and meet daddy in the parlor, please. My hands are dirty. So there are some, you have to understand there is no one size fits all. I'm not even going to make you even live here with that kind of understanding. There's no one size fits all. That's why I started with telling you that you have to understand the level of the mindset that you're dealing with in your spouse. What is the root of that tendency? From you, from them? How did they grow up? What is their mindset concerning this issue? When you're attending seminars, you're attending courses, bring your spouse along. I had so many couples who are, still on with me on the 1 year program who started out with this issue. But because their spouse came on board, there's certain things that their spouse heard me share that got them participating at home. Because sometimes most people don't even understand the impact of this tendency of theirs. Some fathers don't even know how it impacts a child when they're not involved. They think that when they pay school fees, they have done the best. In fact, they're the best dad in the world when they buy bread in the morning, when they pay school, when they pay lights, pay rent. Yeah, those things are great. We are grateful for spouses who provide. But that is not the end. That is not the end. There is a lot more that children need to see their fathers doing. That presence, that fatherly presence is so different and so important that you should not give up working to break this narrative. So this week, I challenge you to identify one area. Identify one area, okay? Identify one area where you've been carrying the load alone. Speak up. Invite your spouse into it. Teach your spouse how to change a baby's diaper. There's husbands who you have a family with 4 kids and the husband doesn't know how to change one diaper, or to even make baby formula, or to make the baby's food, or to even feed the baby. Now, I'm going to share this story with you. I've had about two cases now, no, I think three cases so far, of husbands who reached out to me after their spouse died, in pain, broken. Why? Not, yeah, because of the spouse passing, but also because they don't even know what to do. As in, they were lost, like completely clueless about how to help their children. They had no idea because their wife did every single thing. So sometimes I tell myself, one of the reasons why, if you're still looking for more reasons why you should break the cycle, think about what will happen to your children if something should happen to you. It's arrogance to think that you will always be there. Yeah, we all, aspire and are believing God to have long, fruitful, live to a ripe old age. But I'm sure we all know cases of people who have left before time, or early. What happens to your kids? Their father doesn't know anything about them. Nothing. Nothing. So parenting isn't about one parent carrying the weight. I'm sure we have already gotten the gist of that. It's about partnership. And partnership is the legacy that our children deserve. That's what we should model for them to see. They have to see you do it. They have to see you do it. And yes, it can be learned. It can be learned. So for every home, this will look very different, but participation is not negotiable. It's not negotiable. The benefits are so tremendous that you want to do everything in your power. Keep working on it. Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep inviting participation. Don't just sit there and quietly carry the load. All right? Don't sit there because you are passing a message to your children. Let your children see their daddy showing up for pity. Let your children see their daddy attending their end of year Christmas party, sitting there, sitting through it. Even during Christmas parties, you see the majority are still women. But these kids have fathers. These kids have fathers. In the morning, on Sunday morning, you see the women dragging the children, So this is something that I believe that if we really, really take it to heart, get to work to break the cycle, it's going to benefit not just you who is carrying the burden, but also your children, but also your spouse. Because most men don't realize that excluding yourself from parenting when the kids are still young also means excluding yourself from connection with them. And that also has its consequences when the kids grow big. I heard someone on the forum, one of my forums said, now when the children grow big now, they don't want anything to do with their father, they will say you have poisoned the children's mind against their father. I don't think so. That's, of course, that's not the case, because there's just no connection there. You were never there. You were never there. So yes, that's one of the ways that you can, if you are one of those who believes that scripturally the woman's role is to be a helpmate to her husband, one of the ways that you can and should help him, don't give up. Don't say, oh, let me just be doing it. No, don't give up. All right? Keep creating the platform, opportunities for him to participate. Let go of your perfectionism, all right? And make room for him to come in and participate actively. Invite him. Don't just say, oh, something comes up, just quietly go and do it. So I hate statements like I'm helping my wife do this. I'm helping my wife change your baby's diaper. You're taking care of your child. You're not helping your wife. It's not her duty. It is both your duties. All right. But that takes a whole mind reset. And trust me, it's a whole journey on its own. But learning makes it better. All right. Get books, read together, share with your spouse what you're reading. Sometimes some of these men distance themselves from all of these things because they don't really know how to go about it. And for a man, it's all about his ego. Like I said in my post, I said that because some men will say it's because my wife does it better than me, but you too can learn. So bring your husband along when you're coming for seminars. Read books, share what you're reading with your husband, share what you're reading. Grow together. That really, really helps break the dynamic of single parenting marriage. All right, there are no questions, and I think that we have shared the gist on this topic. If you have any questions, any comments, what has been the highlight for you, please share. Make sure you invite someone else to watch this. They might learn something. And again, we have a course coming up next month on effective communication, right? To help you be able to build healthy family dynamics. Very, very important. Communication is something that we are not taught. You have to learn it. It's an important skill. It's a life skill. I dare call it that. It's a life skill because even marriage thrives with it. Every relationship you have in your life gets better when you learn how to communicate effectively. Effective communication. All right. And for those who are looking to book a slot in the 1 year program, remember one of the things that we have brought to the table this year is the fact that you can book your slot early and gain access to 50% discount on every single course that we have coming up for the rest of the year up to the time when the program begins to help you to keep learning while you wait. Discount on all our courses, all our guides just by booking your slot early for the 1 year program called DR365. All right, please share your feedback with me. I'd like to know which one resonates the most with you, which one you're going to try. We've shared some tips on how to, start working on breaking the cycle in your home. Do not be quiet. Speak up, speak out. All right, this is not a license for you to go and be, all to become to nag about it or to become disrespectful. No, it's not about that. That's not what I'm telling you to do. All right, that is only going to make it worse. Learn how to communicate. There is a way, there is a how to go about, putting in your demands, setting up those boundaries, and ensuring that your needs are, or your expectations are also met. Okay, don't silently carry the burden and yet stay bitter about it. You can do something about it. And I really hope that you do. I'm looking forward to hear your feedback if, as you go home and try to implement some of these things. Invite participation, encourage participation, create a platform for your spouse to come in and participate. Don't just silently do everything by yourself. Thank you so much to Mama Vera, Mama Christelle, and every other person who is here. I see we have so many others that I can identify everyone. Mama Joy, thank you so much for being here. You made it a lively session by sharing your feedback. All right? Great. Thank you so much for being here. Bye. I'll see you next week.